All right, people, you know probably more than most people that drive stick shift how the little gear grinds happen, and that basically a synchro is like a brake pad to help synchronize your gear speed with your main shaft or engine speed. And you know what a selector sleeve is and what a shift fork is. So let's just talk about a couple more things that can go wrong. And this one is with the shift fork. So the shift fork, like I said, is basically just this thing, this like shaft, and then these prongs that stick out. And they stick out, we'll say at 90 degrees to the shaft. All right? Like that. To the shaft. And they move straight up and down. If your synchros or your gears are not really lining up, they're worn down, and you're pushing, you're having to push hard to get it to go into gear, because you hear, like, I've read so many stories about people just like laughing about it. They, you know, if they can't find it, they grind it, or they just push hard and it'll go in. Or be a man or whatever else, you know, it's not really a big deal or whatever. If you have to push really hard to get it to go into gear, okay, because of worn issues, or if you shift really hard at high RPM, even if you have good synchros, good gear teeth, everything's moving nicely, and you shift, you bang it really hard, okay? You're racing somebody and you bang really hard and you pull on the shifter even after it goes into gear, like you slam it, right? What could happen is you could end up bending this fork. So instead of it being pointing straight out, it might bend down, it might bend up, all right? It might not point, like, be perpendicular to the shaft anymore. It'll just be like, and it could be very subtle. It could just be like that. It could be more, it could be bent at the end, right? These are just fingers, and you're just like, you know, pushing up, pushing down, down, up, down, up. And if they bend up or bend down, for example, if they bend down, when you go to select like third gear, okay, it might go in easy. When you go to select fourth gear and you pull up, okay, let me get it closer. Since this is bent, it's not going to travel the same amount, the same distance it did before, okay? If it's bent down, it's not going to push this sleeve up the same distance, so it might not grab all the way onto the gear teeth. So it might just go like, okay, it might be like that, okay? Where when you start to get on the gas, it just kind of pushes it down, and it's not fully grabbed onto the teeth. And that is because that finger is no longer moving the same distance up because it is bent down. All right, and that can happen from, again, hard shifts with good gears or even bad gears. That's called a bent shift fork. All right, here. So this is not an issue. I just wanted to show you something interesting while we're here. This is a brass synchro. All right. So most synchros are made of brass, and like I pointed out, they have that little serrations on the inside to help grab onto the gear and stop the gear real fast. At high RPM, it gets harder and harder to stop the gear, to break the gear, like, you know, slow it down. So there are some companies that sell carbon lined synchros. So this actually has some like carbon material on the inside. It is actually like a brake pad on the inside. And what happened to the light? All right. And so this is supposed to be like a more aggressive material on the inside, so it can be more aggressive when stopping like when being forced onto the gear at high RPM. And what's interesting, some cars actually come with carbon synchros from the factory. All right, I wanted to show you one more time why it's so important, why these little teeth maintain their shapes. All right, you know, they are pointed like little rooftops, and as they get rounded off, it gets harder and harder to go into gear. So I'm just going to give you an example here. And remember, this is the selector ring. It has its own little teeth that are pointed up. That's the gold ring, that's the synchro ring. It has its own little teeth that are pointed down, and these ones are the gear teeth that have their own little teeth pointed down as well. I'm gonna misalign the teeth. All right, and watch what happens. Just from the gears having that rooftop shape, they can slide off of each other and align themselves. Okay, so we'll pull this down, and you can see they've lined up. Okay, so we'll pull this down, and you can see they've lined up. So they've aligned themselves just from having that rooftop, that triangle shape where they can bounce off and align themselves. As those teeth get rounded off and flattened, it gets harder and harder for the shift selector to grab onto the gear.